All right, welcome. Right now, I'm just going to go through a memory leak example, just so that you can get a bit more of an understanding and that we can go through it a little bit slower. So here I've got three classes. So I've got the driver class, I've got the dog class, and I've got the dog owner class. Okay, so what I'm doing here is in this dog owner class, I've got three attributes. I've got the dog owner's name, okay? I've got a dog using the dog class, and I've got a boolean called busy, and we'll talk about that in a sec. So we've got our constructor. It accepts the name of the dog owner, but it also accepts the details about the dog. So we've got the dog's name, the dog's color, and the dog's age. We'll set the name to the correct name, what name comes in, and we will then create an instance of the dog class using the values that were passed into the constructor. So we've got dog name, dog color, and dog age. And we'll save that memory address that is returned by the constructor into this object reference called dog. We then have a variable, our attribute called busy, and we are going to just set that to false. Okay? We've then got a mutator method called setBusy, which just changes busy from true and false. We have then got a accessor called getdog, and this getDog accessor method returns the object reference of the dog. And then we've got another method called walkDog. Okay? And what this does is if busy is true, then it'll print out that the dog cannot be walked right now because the name of the dog owner is busy. Else, if the owner isn't busy, then it will call the instance method incrementwalks of the dog class for this dog instance to increment the number of walks that the dog has been on. So now we'll have a look at the dog class. So in the dog class, we have the name of the dog, the color of the dog, the age of the dog, and the number of walks. The constructor sets the name, the color, and the age, and it sets the number of walks to be 0 from the start. We have the accessor getName. We have a method called incrementwalks, which just increments the number of walks, this attribute here, by 1. We then have getNumberOfWalks, which just returns the number of walks. Now, one thing that we need to note is that this is private, okay? So we don't want anyone changing our dog, okay? We should be able to change our dog through this dog owner class, but we shouldn't be able to change it anywhere else. Then I've got my driver class. So my driver class, we have a constructor which creates a dog owner. It returns the reference and stores it in owner1. We then have owner1.walkDog. We have owner1.setBusy. We have owner1walkDog. We print out owner1.getDog.getNumberOfWalks. So here we use our reference, we get the instance method getDog, and then that reference is returned, and based on that reference, we get the number of walks. So we get the number of walks from that particular instance of dog. Here, we get the dog, but we store the reference. Then, using that reference, we increment the walks. Then, we print out the number of walks. Now, the important thing here is this method here. So this method here says that the dog can only go for walks when the dog owner is not busy. Okay, so if the dog owner is busy, then it should print out cannot walk now the dog owner is busy. So let's have a look at what happens here. So first line, so we start off with main, so we're currently in here, and we look at the first line. So here we create a dog owner object. Okay. And it has attributes name and dog. Okay. We also have the attribute busy. Okay. And we will make up a memory address such as 14. Okay. We've now called this, and we're now in the constructor. And we've passed this name, we've passed the dog name, we've passed the dog color, and we've passed the dog age. So the name is Harry. So we've got Harry gets set to the attribute name. So we've got Harry here. We then have this new constructor here. Okay, so we're now on the second line. And we call this constructor. So firstly, we create another object. And this time, this object is of the dog class. Okay. So this is of the dog owner class. And this is of the dog class. Okay, and we'll give it memory address 28. And it has attributes name, color, age, and number of walks. So what we pass to it is we take the attribute and pass that into this constructors. So these three attributes get passed, and these get passed into our constructor. Age is there. So our name was Spike that got passed in, which got passed into this constructor. And so Spike will get set to the attribute name. We get Spike. The color that got passed in is brown. So we've got a brown dog. And so the color, brown, will get to this set to the attribute color. We have brown. The age is 12. And the attribute number of walks gets set to 0 from the start. Then we return from this constructor. Okay. And a memory address is returned and stored in dog. And we know that this memory address is 28. So 28 gets stored in dog. We are now at the third line of the constructor. And we set busy to false. So now busy is false. We've then reached the end of our constructor. And so we return back to main. Oops. So now in main, we also have an object reference called owner1. And that reference stores 14. So you can see from this that if I need to access this dog owner, I can use this 14 to look where it exists in memory. It exists at address 14. We now are going to line 2. So we go owner1.walkDog. So we use this memory address and we call the instance method called walkDog, which is already highlighted here. So this is using the memory or the state from this dog owner. And we check if busy. Busy is false, so this is not true. So we go to the else. And in the else, we've got dog.incrementwalks. Now we've stored the dog address. So we call the instance method called incrementwalks here using this state. Okay? And so dog.incrementwalks will increment the number of walks by 1. And so we get a 1 here. We then return from this method because we've reached that end curly brace. And same with this method, we reach the end, and so we return from this. And so now we are on line 3 of main. We then have owner1.setBusy true. So we call the setBusy method for this owner, and we change this busy attribute to true. We then return back to main because there is nothing else in this method, and we go on to the next line. This time we've got owner1.walkDog, and so we call this method down here, and now we go if busy, and we grab this busy and it's true. So we do this part instead. So this time we get cannot walk printed to the screen. We go dog.getName. Okay, we've got that reference. So we go to our dog and we get the name. Okay, and the name is Spike, cannot walk Spike. Now, Harry is busy. So we're grabbing name, which is here, and replacing it in our string. So what we've done here is that when the dog owner is busy, we can't walk the dog, and we've protected this increment walks from being incremented. So we're accurately counting how many times the dog has actually been walked by the dog owner. So we finish that. Okay, we don't do the else because we've done the if. So we exit that method, and now we're on the next line. So here we've got system.out.println, so we're printing to the screen. And we've got owner1.getDog.getNumber of walks. So here, owner1 is 14, and so it's referring to this object. We then call the method getDog, and that returns this address. So we now got 28, that memory address, dot get number of walks. So for this dog, we're going to get the number of walks. And we return the number of walks, and it should be 1. So we print 1 to the screen. Okay, we end that method, and we end this line. We then go to the next line. Okay. And here we go owner1.getDog. So we return this memory address 28, and we create a new object reference called dog1. And we store that memory address in here. Now, because I have access to that memory address, I can now go dog1.incrementwalks. So it's referring to this dog, and I'm going to call this method. So by incrementing the walks, it now becomes 2. I then do this 2 more times, such that it becomes 4. I then get to this last line, and I go owner1.getDog.getNumber of walks, which will return the number of walks for this dog. Okay, so we're getting the dog from the owner. This is our private object that should not be able to be accessed by the driver, and directly we shouldn't be able to change the state. But what you notice is that we have, because we're getting 4 out. And this broke our rule of walking the dog. So you can see here that we can increment the walks without checking if the owner is busy. And this is what is known as a privacy leak. Okay? So even though this dog is private, we're still able to change the state of this object. So what we want to do instead is pretty much the same thing, but we want to, when someone tries to do something like this, we just want to give them a copy so that we don't affect the state of our object within our other object. So we're going to edit the dog owner and the dog class in a couple of little ways. So the first thing we're going to do in the getDog is get rid of the return dog. So we're not going to give them this memory address. Okay. In the dog class, we're going to add another method called clone. Okay. So we've got public dog clone. So this clone method returns a memory address. Okay. And we've got dog cloned. So we're calling this object reference cloned is new dog with the same name, color, and age. Now, when we call this constructor, it's going to set the number of walks to 0. But we want our clone to be exactly the same as our original object. So we also need to copy the number of walks from our original objects. And we can do that by clone.numberofwalks becomes number of walks. Now note, because we're inside this object, we can access the private attributes directly. We then return cloned. So we return a different memory address because we're creating a new object here with a different memory address. And now inside this getDog, what we'll do, oops, wrong one, that one, we'll now return dog.clone. Okay, so we'll call this method and return a copy. So let's have a look at that in action. We'll get rid of this. Get rid of this. So the first line is the same as last time. Okay, so we create our dog owner and we also create our dog, and we pass Harry, so we get Harry. We create this dog object with Spike, Brown, and 12, and we start the number of walks as 0. Okay. We also set busy to false. Okay, so that first line is exactly the same as before. So if you want to go over that again, just go back to the start. The second line is exactly the same as well. So we've got owner1.walkDog. We come down here and go to walk dog. They're not busy because this is false. And so we increment the walks by 1. So we get 1. We then change the busy state of the owner to true. So this becomes true. And we try and call the walk dog again. And this time, busy is true, so it'll print out cannot walk Spike. Now, oops, Harry is busy. We then go to the next line, which is similar to before, but slightly different. So we're going to have a look at this in a bit more detail. So here we've got owner1, so we're referring to this object, and we go to getDog. Now inside that, we have to call another method, which is dog.clone. So we call this clone method here. And in this clone method, we create another dog. Okay, so we've called a constructor, so we've created another dog. This dog calls the constructor, okay, and it has the same values for name, color, and age as the original attributes. So we get name, Spike, color, brown, age is 12, and we also set the number of walks to 0 because that is in our constructor. Now, we also have a memory address for this, so let's say it's 21. Okay, let's just say it's 21. And then here, we set cloned.number of walks, so cloned is referring to this object, okay? Dot number of walks to the number of walks in this instance, the instance we're currently in, okay? So these attributes are referring to this object because we called that object, okay? So this changes to 1, and then we return this memory address. So we return this 21, not 28 anymore. So we've got 21 here, and we return that value. So we've got 21, and now we go, for this memory address, I get the number of walks. So I go and have a look, 21's here, number of walks is 1, so it'll print 1. That's all good. Now, when we finish this line, we haven't stored that memory address anywhere. So this object is as good as gone. Okay, we can't access it anymore. All right, so once we finish that line, we didn't store that 21 anywhere, so we can't access that. Then, on the next line, we have owner1.getDog. So we come into this getDog, we call this dog.clone, so we're back in here again. And once again, we create another object. So we create another dog object, and we have name, we have color, we have age, and we have number of walks. And we'll give this one a memory address of 57. Okay. We call the constructor. It takes the values of the attributes. because that's what's passed in. And so we get spike, brown, 12, and don't forget that this gets set to 0. On the next line, we copy the number of walks from here into here, and we get 1. Okay. And then we return that memory address. So we return 57, and then from here we return 57 as well. Okay. The memory addresses are just arbitrary. They could be anything. I'm just making them up. All right. We create this object reference. Okay, so called dog1. And this one stores 57. Okay. We then get to the next line. And we go dog1.incrementwalks. So we've got this reference 57. So we call the incrementwalks method for this instance with this state, and we increment the number of walks. So we get 2. We then increment it again, and we get 3, and we increment it again, and we get 4. We then get to this last line. Okay. Now, what you can note before we do that is that this time, this hasn't changed. Okay, the 1 has, oh, whoops. The 1 has not changed. All right, this is the actual number of walks because we have to get the dog owner to walk the dog. This copy, this is just a garbage value. Okay, it's not the true number of walks. Okay, so you can see that in main, they never get access to this address, this 28. That's because it's meant to be private. And if you don't return a clone, then the problem is that you end up giving access to this object, which you do not want to. And why bother making this private if they can just access it? Okay? You might as well make that public if you really wanted them to access it, because it is basically the same thing. So now we look at this last line. So here we've got owner1.getDog. So we'll do that part first. So we go to getDog. We have to call this dog.getClone. So we come here and we call this clone method. Now this is calling from this dog because dog is 28. Okay. We now create another dog. Okay. So we once again have name, color, age, and number of walks. So we call the constructor once again, and we end up with spike, brown, and 12, and the number of walks set to 0. This is quite important. So here we copy the number of walks into cloned.number of walks. Now, remember, we're calling the clone method from dog, which is our original dog. It's the one here, 28. So this one has 1 stored in it. And so clone.number of walks is going to be 1. Okay. We then return another memory address. So let's say this is 108. Okay. So we return 108 to the getDog method, and that returns that back to main. We then have this reference.getNumber of walks. So we're talking about the state of this one. We use the method getNumber of walks, and we return a 1, and we print a 1. We then end that line, meaning that we haven't stored the 108 anywhere, so that's good as gone. And what you'll note is that we've got 1 and 1, which is the correct number of walks. So you can see by using this clone, we can protect the privacy of this dog. So it stays private. Okay? Without that, you're basically making this dog public, which is called a privacy leak. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. The other thing to note is that in IOO, the next subject, you will be changing this a little bit. Okay? But for now, that doesn't really matter us. All right, so hopefully that helped, and good luck.